Now, I know that you are very excited to hear the presentation from the third keynote speaker, Dr. Everard van Kemenade from Netherlands. Here are some brief introduction about our keynote speaker. Dr. Everard started as a university lecturer, researcher and consultant on quality management at Fonte University of Applied Science in Netherlands. He used to work in many countries in the world on quality management system, including Vietnam. He held his PhD on certification, accreditation, and professional. He wrote books and articles for TQM magazine, Quality in Higher Education, Quality TQM journal, and Quality Progress, and many others. Yes, I was very amazed at his CV. He is now teaching quality at the Master of Integrated Care Design Homeschool. And besides, he is a director of Van Kemenade Audit Coaching and Training. Yes. As such, he already educated hundreds of people in quality auditing. Welcome you to his talk today. The talk I would like to welcome all of you to his talk today with the title, The Emergence Paradigm in Higher Education and in the Higher Education Audit System. Please welcome him.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here at this conference, the first international conference on assessment and measurement in education. And the topic is new trends in educational assessment and quality assurance. And I'm very glad that I've been invited. And my topic would be on quality assurance, because that is where my expertise is about. The original title was Capacity Building of Internal and External Auditors in the Complex Adaptive System of Higher Education in Vietnam. I want to talk to you about auditing. And I do this from a specific perspective. And I call that perspective the emergence paradigm. And I will explain what I mean with that later. Yes, my name is Everard van Kemenade. I come from the Netherlands, from Holland. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about my country, because in the emergence paradigm, my way of looking at the world, it's important to see the context where you're from. So in the left, you will see our king and our queen. In the middle here, you see our flag, red, white, and blue. And in the back, in the right side, you see my country, the Netherlands, or as you call it, Holland. There you see one of the things we are famous for, that's football. Actually, that is Johan Cruyff over there. We are famous for our tulips, and maybe not all of you know, but we are very famous as well because of our dance DJs, musicians. Next slide, please. Yes, Holland is also known to be more than 27% below sea level. And you can imagine that that is a problem sometimes. So we build dikes, as you see. We're famous for building dikes. We're also famous for our bikes. Like you have motorbikes all over the cities. We have bikes, and we teach our children from little age to ride a bike. We are a flat country. Our highest, if you could call it a mountain, is called Vaalserberg, and has only 322 meters height. So it's a very flat country. The other thing I would like to show is here the Global Competitive Index from a few years ago, where Holland was the third worldwide on higher education and training after Singapore and Finland. We quite have a good higher education system, if I may say so. And I'm not saying this to bribe that we are such a good country. Yes, you can go to the next slide. I'm not saying this because we are such a good country, and I will show you. But I just want to understand, I'd like you to understand what the comparison between Holland, where I come from, and Vietnam, where you live, are. Vietnam has, sorry, can you go back, please? One more, yeah. Vietnam has about 96 million inhabitants, where Holland has only 16 million. Your surface is about 331,000 square kilometers, where our surface is only 42,000 square kilometers. That means that the population density in Vietnam is supposed to be 290 people per square kilometers, where in Holland that is 416. So we live much closer on a smaller space. Your GDP growth, is much higher than ours. You have a GDP growth from 1.8%, where we only have a GDP growth from 0.7. And interesting is also how the situation is regarding the worldwide corona. You have reported in May this year 328 cases of corona, and at that time in Halan we had 10,000. And when we look at yesterday you had 1,148 corona cases, where in the meanwhile we have 272,000. So that's quite a difference. And if you look at the death of corona, at the time yesterday you had 35 people who died, where we had 7,000. And I think it has got a lot to do with the policy that the government uses to fight, to battle against corona. And as far as I know, you had an immediate total lockdown in your country. And I would address that to be an example of the empirical paradigm, I will explain later, where we had what they call in Holland an intelligent lockdown. And an intelligent lockdown means that there are rules set, but we wait for everyone to obey to them because of we think that they have their own responsibility to do so, and they will. Well, as you see, not everyone is going to do it. And that is a way of thinking that fits with the reflective paradigm, which again, I will explain later. I also would like you to tell a little bit more about me, because, well, I'm sitting here looking at your situation in Vietnam, and who the hell is this guy that thinks that he can say anything from Holland over the situation in Vietnam? My name is Everard van Kemenade, born in 1953. I have here a picture coming, I think. Yes, this is how I looked like when I was a small boy. I had a little bit more hair, as you see, at the time. Next slide, please. This is even more hair you see when I was young. You would have called me a hippie at the time. In 1978, I got married, and me and my wife are still together. And of course, not of course, but sometimes then children come. So I have two children, a boy, Onno, and a girl, Nina. And in the meanwhile, I have three grandchildren as well. This is Onno. This is how he looks now. These are his two grandchildren, my grandchildren. This is Nina, and this is her girl. And yes, we also have a dog. It's called Bowie from David Bowie. By the way, in 1980, it gets now more to the topic. In 1980, I got my first quality management assignment, and I started my own company, Van Kemenade Act, in audit, coaching, and training. And in 2004, I was invited to come to Vietnam for the first time. I gave workshops on quality assurance at Canton University in 2004. Here was a picture of it. And since then, I've been like 10, 11 times to Vietnam. Below left, you see some of your motorbikes. Below right, you see one of the happenings where I enjoyed your food so much. And on top right, you see, of course, one of the karaoke happenings that I was visiting, one of the many that I did. I love your country, ladies and gentlemen. In 2009, I got my PhD, so at a later age, on certification, accreditation, and the professionals, as Rowan already said. Besides my own company, I do research on quality management at the University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht. I'd like you to show my website, if someone will help me to show it for me. It's Van Kemenade act.nl. There it is, thank you. You see publications and citations here. And you see, by the way, Van Mieu, the Temple of Literature in Hanoi. And there, yes, the entrance. It's one of the nicest places in Hanoi that I know. Very quiet and peaceful to be for a while in a busy day. But the page, it is meant to be the Temple of Literature because the page is about my publications, and all the publications that I have are here available for you. So you can find all sorts of articles below on quality and quality management and on the emergence paradigm that I will be talking about more. So if you can go back to the slides, please. Yes, thank you. And then to the next slide. Okay, it's time that I get to know you a little bit better, because the emergence paradigm, one is about knowing the context that someone is talking from. That's why I showed you something about my country, but it's also about interaction with you. So for me, it's important to know who you are. For that purpose, I made a poll, and the idea is that you now fill in the poll. You answer some questions, like some people are starting to do it already, I see. Tell if you're male or female, where you work, what kind of institute you work. What kind of work you do. I see now 22 people, 23 people have answered. So we wait till more people are answering the questions. Don't be afraid, I won't use this data. And by the way, they will be anonymous. So you don't have to be afraid to fill it in. Okay, not everyone voted yet, but maybe it's not easy to do this when you do this for the first time. I see 37 of 76 people, or let's say almost half of the people voted. Okay, this is the results. You can share them. You see that from the people who voted, 45% was male and 55% of you is female. Most of you work in Hanoi, and most of you work at a university, what actually I expected. But there is one from government, and most of you work in the field of quality. Some are managers and others are others. Okay, thank you. You can stop sharing the results from the poll now. And go to the slide, thank you. So we have some impression of you are. I'm going to do this polling a few times more in my presentation because I would like to indeed make it a more interactive session, although we are so far away from each other. Next slide, please. Yes, I'm going to talk to you about two topics. I have to explain these paradigms that I already have been talking about a few times the last 10 minutes. So I call them lenses to look at quality. Like I said, I'm going to talk to you about quality assurance, and there are different ways of looking at quality and at quality assurance. And I think it's important to know what these ways are. And from there, I will then go to what do these paradigms mean in higher education, specifically in higher education quality management, and then even more specific, I will talk to you about accreditation and especially about auditing. So you could call it the future of accreditation and audits. Next slide, please. Okay, why? I found out, and with me some other colleagues in the Netherlands, that there is a lot of misunderstanding about quality, and even more, how to manage quality. And likewise, there is a lot of misunderstanding between professionals, and even within the same discipline, for instance, in a university, about how to deliver quality education. You surely will have been part of all the discussions with colleagues about what quality actually is. And in my opinion, this misunderstanding about what quality is finds its roots in the different lenses with which people look at the world. Thank you. Next slide. So I would like to present 4 lenses on quality. You have the Vietnamese translation here, and I'd like to thank the organizers for doing so. So it will make it more easy for you to follow my presentation because you have the Vietnamese translation. Okay. It started with a discussion in the Dutch Academy for Quality. I'm a member of what's called the Dutch Academy of Quality. And in that group of people, someone initiated the discussion on the lenses, the schools, as he called them, on quality. His name is Huub Vinkenburg, and there will be a picture of him in a moment. There he is, Huub Vinkenburg, who is another famous expert on quality in the Netherlands. And more people were involved in this discussion. And that's like, it led to an article that I wrote together with Teun Harjono, 21st Century Total Quality Management, the Emergence Paradigm, and TQM Journal. And it's available on my website or here through the link. And here Teun Harjono is. Teun Harjono and I wrote a book, The Emergence Paradigm, that has just been published this month. Okay. And that's me again. Thank you. Do you recognize these ways of thinking? This is the first, sorry, this goes too fast. Yes, thank you. First, this one. This way of thinking is to measure is to know. If you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. Maybe you have heard this saying by people. Maybe this is the way the quality management system in your university works. And maybe you recognize this in your country. I don't know. Second, not everyone thinks like that. I'd like to this quote by Albert Einstein, who said, "Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts." In other words, there are a lot of things that are very important that you cannot measure. Specifically, when we get to things like attitude, it's much more difficult to measure attitude than skills and knowledge, for instance. Thank you. Next. There is a third way of thinking, and that is when people say, no, 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 you can maybe measure, you can maybe not measure, but what is important is that you have a model to use to compare the reality with. So this is an article I found by Nguyen Thi Hao, if I pronounce the name right, who is applying the Malcolm Baldrige Award model from the United States to Vietnam higher education quality management. I don't know if the person is in the room. I don't know if you know him or her, but for me, this was a good example of saying some people think that it's important to have a model to compare the situation with and to see to what extent you are fitting what's said in the model. It's another way of thinking about quality. And the last one, maybe you have experienced that, let's say in the middle of the night, you wake up and you get a brilliant idea. I have a small book, this book beside my bed, and I write then the brilliant idea in the booklet, the quality, the novelty, the perfect thing that I found out. And that is from what you could call the emergence paradigm. The idea emerges from your mind, you could say. Here, the four paradigms, again, I have to explain it a little bit more. On the right side, you have what now is called the empirical paradigm, about measuring. Then we have the second one. Yes, the reference paradigm. You refer to a model. Then the third paradigm is called the reflective paradigm, where you start thinking with professionals about what quality is. And in the third, the emergence paradigm. In the interaction between people, the novelty, the quality pops up, comes up, emerges. Now, the thing is that the empirical paradigm and the reference paradigm fits best in a situation of order, where the reflective paradigm and the emergence paradigm fit best in a context where there is an order. Get back to that later. Thank you. Next slide. Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, good. So I'm going to explain the four paradigms using in the left column their definition on quality, how they make decisions. I use a metaphor to explain it a little bit better. I explain what their logic of command is, their leadership, what kind of science they use, and what the risk of that way of thinking is. And I will go by one. Okay, there we are. The first, sorry. I would like you to wait before I say next, because I have a long story to tell here. It starts with the definition of quality from the empirical paradigm. The empirical paradigm has as a definition of quality conformance to requirements. You have to have requirements, standards that you have to conform to. Crosby was the quality guru who said so. There are others. Next, please. Other definitions on quality. And the next definition on quality, here you see W. Edwards Deming, another guru on quality, who says that the most important things cannot be measured. So that fits in the reflective paradigm. Next, indeed, another guru, this is Duran. And Duran said, no, quality is fitness for use. So if the customer, or in our case, the student or the world of work can use what we're doing, then it's okay. Next. And in the emergence paradigm, it is said, well, quality changes, quality changes from one day to another. Next click. It is not static. Quality is dynamic. Next, please. You see, it's a dynamic quality. Then, what is, sorry, one by one, what is the empirical paradigm using? It uses standards, it uses rules as needed to know what quality is. Next. Like I said, the reference paradigm needs a reference, so they need models. This is the EFQM model, European Foundation for Quality Management model. It looks a little bit similar like that Malcolm Baldrige model that was just mentioned, and there are others, of course. Next, please. The reflective paradigm doesn't have a model or rules. They have principles. Professionals who together have principles to discuss what quality is. And in the emergence paradigm, it is the interaction between different people who together find out what quality means. Then we talk about who is in charge, you could say. In the empirical paradigm, let's say the management says what quality is. Next, in the reference paradigm, it's the customer who says what quality is. Next, in the reflective paradigm, it is the professional, and in the emergence paradigm, it's not just one person or one group. No, it is the group together, a network, you could say, that decides together what quality is. Next, a metaphor. A metaphor in the empirical paradigm would be the army, where everything is clear, what's right and what's wrong. In the reference paradigm, I have to explain this. Maybe you see Ho Chi Minh here in the middle is a t-shirt. Ho Chi Minh on my t-shirt. And I experienced this when I was in a hotel in Vietnam, at one of my trips. And I had a rough day giving an audit training. And I came back to my hotel, and on the bed of my hotel, the lady who cleaned my room made this up for me. It was my t-shirt, and she put the towel and she put rosebuds on it. And I must say, I was very, very pleased that she did this for me after a rough day of work, that you get some real pleasure from the lady who did this. It is customer delight. What she did is she really delighted me as a customer of her hotel. Thank you. Next. And a metaphor for the reflective paradigm would be the thinker or thinking. This is a statue from Rodin in Paris, who's a thinking guy. And then the metaphor for the emergence paradigm would be a jazz combo, the improvising jazz combo. So there are no rules, there is no plan. Everyone plays, and in the end there is a beautiful piece of music. But it was not not written down before the group came together. Thank you. Next. So what kind of leadership then fits in the empirical paradigm? In the empirical paradigm, it's a directive leadership. You see here the boss shouting at the people. In the reference paradigm, you see where the thumb is up, you see the coach who helps the people to become better and closer to the model, you could say. In the reflective paradigm, leadership is delegating. So if you are the professional, you know best, so I give you the key to what you have to do. And in the emergence paradigm, it is the team. It is shared leadership. It's not just one person who leads, or not only the official leaders, but the leadership is shared between the group of people. Thank you. Next. Then we talk about the scientific way and the science that is used. In the top bottom, you see that in the empirical paradigm, things like statistics and mathematics are important scientific methods that are used. You could call it positivistic, if you like. In the reference paradigm, you see system theory as a way of thinking in systems. You could also call it constructivism. In the reflective paradigm, you see philosophy as the main science that is used. Is subjectivism. And in the emergence paradigm, next please, you see complexity theory as the main science that is used to solve the problems. Next. Then about the risks, as the last part. The risk of the empirical paradigm and the measuring and such is that we end up in bureaucracy. The next, please. The risk of putting the customer in the middle is pampering the customer. You give him too much, you could say, or her in this case. The risk of the reflective paradigm is arrogance. And I'd like to add here, I told you about the reflective paradigm when I compared the way of handling Corona in Vietnam and in the Netherlands. And I told you that in Holland, we use the reflective paradigm. Everyone has his own responsibility to obey the rules or not. And the risk of that is arrogance. And that's what I see in Holland regarding the Corona crisis, where we say, oh, that is, we can handle this and we will do the right thing. And in fact, we are not handling it so well at the moment. And that's the risk of arrogance. Oh, back. Yeah, thank you. Here we are again. That is chaos. Chaos is the risk of the emergence paradigm because little is planned, little is organized, and then, yeah, you might get to novelty, but you might also get to chaos. Okay, I needed this as a result. Yes, thank you. You can go to the next. I needed this to explain the four paradigms. This is actually the same as I told you just a moment ago, but it is written down so for later that if you see this PowerPoint, that you can still understand what the pictures meant on the page before. And I highlighted in red what decisions are based on in the specific paradigms. So in the empirical paradigm, decisions are based on rules, standards. In the reference paradigm, models, guidelines. In the reflective paradigm, professional principles. And in the emergence paradigm, it's about shared values and interaction between actors. So I needed this to continue, thank you, next slide. There's one more thing I have to say, because on this, it is not so, in my opinion, that one paradigm is better than the other. All paradigms are needed. We need them all in different moments, in different contexts, you could say. And together, in my opinion, they form what I would call total quality management. Together, they are total quality management or epistemic fluency. I have to explain in the next slide what epistemic fluency is. Epistemic fluency, a terrible phrase, but it is the capacity to understand, to switch between and combine different kinds of knowledge and different ways of knowing about the world. Luckily, it's translated into Vietnamese at the right part. So that's what it is. It is not one paradigm or another. You have to switch between these paradigms and combine them depending on the context. And that's one of the reasons why I think it was important to tell you a little bit more about my context from where I look at you. Now, if we relate these paradigms to quality management more specifically, then you see that in the empirical paradigm, you would see lots of measurement instruments, measurement of student satisfaction, measurement of performance indicators like how quickly students get a job, and you see the system of accreditation, what really fits in the empirical paradigm. When you look at it, sorry, back please. When you look at the reference paradigm, you see models like the PDCA cycle from Deming or ISO or EFQM used as models to compare. Thank you. Next. Then we have the reflective paradigm. In the reflective paradigm, you would see discussion platforms, professional groups like the American Society for Quality, or in Holland, the Dutch Academy for Quality. And you would see conferences like this, because what we are doing now actually is having a conference, and that fits within reflective paradigm. Next slide, please. In the emergence paradigm, you would see interaction or synergy between internal and external elements. You would see interaction between higher education institutes and within the institutes between teachers and students. You would see interaction between institutes and the government, and an instrument that is known to be appreciative inquiry, which stresses that it's important to look in a positive way at an organization rather than only say what is wrong within an organization. It's appreciative inquiry is a specific way of working, please back, that has been designed by a person named Cooper Ryder. I think it's a very important to use that in an unpredictable, unexpected, and unplanned context. And that's where the emergence paradigm is about. Thank you. Next, can you show the video, please? Yes, thank you. You see here birds, starlings. These starlings, these are thousands together, in small groups of 7 communicate with each other to create such beautiful ways of flying. And the form changes all the time, and they do it very often, and it is amazing to be part of it. Thank you. Yeah, One back, please. Yeah. Why did I show you these starlings? Because these starlings are a nice example of what emergence is, what it does. Emergence, so, is about interaction between elements, birds, it can be ants, even ants building an anthill is another example, but it also is about people within organizations, if they interact with each other and if they then create together something new, a novelty. So it's the co-creation between people of a new coherent pattern, what is called a novelty or a radical innovation. Okay, sorry. Now it's time for you again. I hope you understood the 4 paradigms, because the next question is about who would say your organization looks at quality, mainly from the empirical paradigm. Who would say that your organization looks at quality, mainly from the reference paradigm? Who would say that your organization looks at quality mainly from the reflective paradigm or the emergence paradigm? Or maybe you don't know which one is the case. So I'd like you to choose what you see as a main way of thinking in your organization about quality. If you can start the poll, please.
Dr. Everard, I
yes.
understand that this poll has not been created by the technician.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. And then we continue. If we cannot see it, but I hope you have done it in your mind and looked at what your answer would be if the poll would have been done. Maybe you can put your organization in one of the 4 boxes, if I could say so. Okay, next slide, please. So, a little bit more deeper into emergence. It's about the co-creation of something new, a novelty. And I looked for an example in higher education, and maybe blended learning is such an example. More and more we're using blended learning, and that tries to cope with being online as well as being together in small groups, giving cooperation assignments, individual assignments. We try to, and I definitely think you are doing so in Vietnam as well, trying to combine different ways of learning. And at the time, let's say 10 years ago, that was really a radical innovation in higher education. Thank you. Next slide. Okay. More examples of novelties, because it's important to know what I mean. In the left corner top, left corner, you see cars, and these cars, wait with the video, please. You see cars, and these are cars that normally were used to cool food. Well, in New York, a lot of people died from corona, and they could not bury them immediately. So what they had to do is to find a way to store these, and they got the idea to put them in these cool cars. It is a terrible story, of course, but it is quite a clever thing of doing. On the right side, a little bit more positive example, Cristiano Ronaldo, another football player that some of you might know. Cristiano Ronaldo owns a lot of hospitals. And at the time when Corona broke out in his country, he got the idea to transform some of his hospitals, hotels into a hospital where patients for corona who could not be treated in a real hospital could be helped. And on the right back, under right, there is a video. I would like to show you that one, yeah. It's also an example of a novelty in Corona times, I think. You know this example better than I do. Please show it. Yeah, here it comes. It's a pity you don't hear the music. It's a video that is made in Vietnam for young people to learn how to wash their hands. And it's has a nice music with it. And I think it's motivating. I think it's a very novel idea to try to influence young people to wash their hands in Corona times by using a video like this. Thank you. And now I have another video. Further, please. It's the video, next video I would like you to see. Yes, this is the one. Thank you. This, I think you know better than I do because I haven't seen it in practice. But I think it is a good example of a real novelty, a real interesting idea to create these rice ATMs in times when people really need to get their food. I don't know if they are still there and what you think of it, but for me it was a good example of a very radical innovation. And it was marketing, of course, too, as well, I can imagine. Okay, you can stop the video.
Dr. Everard, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but just remind you that we have 5 minutes left, including presenting and Q&A.
Okay. Okay, I cast a message. I have to be a little bit quicker. So the emergence paradigm requires a situation of complexity and unorder. Next slide, please. Next slide. And next slide. I'd like to go to the next part then. Here you see that in higher education, the emergence paradigm could be used to have all actors, a diversity of actors, including staff, students, governments, to interact with each other. It could become co-creation of quality assurance. And it would need self-organization as the emergence paradigm requires, but at least more autonomy. Next slide, please. So if we look at audits, in the empirical paradigm, it would be accreditation, and you could call them sometimes inspectors. In the reference paradigm, it would be people, next please, this is the EFQM model as it has been developed in 2004 together with Do Van See, who at the time was the vice rector of Cantor University, to audit with the EFQM model. And then people are more like consultants. Next, please. Auditing in the reflective paradigm would be the visit of critical friends, and in the emergence paradigm, next, it would be an audit wherein there is a co-creation of innovation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The audits can be very supportive for quality assurance, but an accreditation system will be hardly accepted by academics if the auditors are badly trained for the job. This was a part of my PhD study in 2009, where I found this out, and I read that also in Vietnam, this is an issue. Next. Next slide, please. So, now there is a poll again. I would like to do this poll.
Dr. Everard, I'm afraid that this poll has also not been created.
Okay, good. Okay, then I would like you to think about what you think about what kind of a training these auditors need.
Yeah.
I think from the emergence paradigm, you would think they need simple rules, they need creative discourse, and they need improvisation. And that's not always there. Next slide, please. And then main thing is that auditor needs the right attitudes, positive attitude, a positive intention, justice, sincerity, consciousness of self-improvement. Also, an auditor is not perfect. Trust, trustfulness, patience. These are attitudes that, coming from the emergence paradigm, we think that are needed for people who audit others to really create innovation and novelty in higher education. Please continue. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. One more. Okay, let me get to the conclusions because it's time. There are 4 different lenses to look at quality in higher education. That's what I wanted to say. Next. The empirical and reference paradigm fit best in times of order. Third. Next. Reflective and emergence paradigm fit best in times of uncertainty. Next, the emergence paradigm is needed in higher education. The others too, but there is not enough of the emergence paradigm in higher education nowadays, at least not in Holland, Europe, and I think neither in Vietnam. It requires self-organization, it requires more autonomy, and it requires co-creation between all stakeholders and a visionary leadership. Next, accreditation fits in the control-driven context, the empirical paradigm, And acceptance by academics depends, amongst others, on the quality of the internal and external auditors. So, next. Auditors can be inspectors, consultants, peers, or co-creators. Yes, next. But in the emergence paradigm, audits occur if auditors are trained in simple rules, creative discourse, improvisation, and the right attitude. And next slide, please. This is some of the literature I used in my presentation. Next slide, please. And this is, well, you know what it is. I would like to thank you for listening to my presentation. I'd like to thank the organizers for the difficult task to show all the videos and all the polls and things that were there. And thank you for listening to my presentation. And there's some time, I think, for questions and answers.
Thank you, Mr. Everard, for very meaningful presentation about accreditation and audit. He already mentioned about four paradigm, and there are a lot of useful information for the people who are working in the area of accreditation and audition.
Right.
Thank you so much for your presentation today. Actually, because of the time limitation, we received 6 questions, but I will send to you through email and get your answer, and then I can send back to the people who sent the question.
It's a perfect idea, and I will answer them very quickly. Thank you, I will do.
Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, a minor reminder for you that now it's time for us to come back to the Zoom session. Please, after the Zoom session, we will come back to room 1 for the closing remark. Okay?
Okay.
So see you.
See you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Everard.
Goodbye. Have a nice time.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.